Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of EVCA's Talk at 5 o'clock. I'm sure there's 5 o'clock somewhere today. So, and here we're on Friday with Chris Hood. He is the AI keynote speaker and strategic advisor, and he's helping enterprises to unlock customer-centric AI growth. Chris, it's my honor to have you on the podcast, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here.
I'm excited to dive into all customer-centric AI. I think it's been severely underrepresented topic and completely misunderstood. What are your take on this?
I would completely agree. So, we're seeing a lot of reports coming out recently about the failure rates of AI pilots and projects. And all of those look at the underlying technology concerns. But my spin on this is that it's really not about the technology. There are two components that people are getting wrong. The first one is that they don't understand the actual capabilities of AI. And this is mostly coming from marketing hype that is out there. And number two is they're focused in the wrong area. They're focused on efficiency improvements as opposed to solving their customers' problems. So, so the biggest, so the bigger problem here is that if you are not solving your customers' problems, well, then you're going down a wrong path. And so, no matter how much AI you want to use, you're not going to be successful in that implementation. And so, when I think about customer centric artificial intelligence, it basically starts with the premise of who are you serving, your customer? What are their problems? Like any business is trying to accomplish, is solving your customers' problems. And then, how can we use AI potentially to help us solve that problem? And if you go down that framework, you're going to be more successful.
That's beautiful. And let me say that their customers can be an internal one and the external one, right? And that's a very interesting thing to think about it because sometimes we so much focus on external customers and let our internal customers, mean our employees and stakeholders, left in the dark and wondering like what the heck are we going on, what's going on, or we focus on internal customers and ensuring, and that's what you just touched base on, is the focusing on automations and helping the internal customers, completely abandoning experience that our external customers who actually bring us dollars have experience. Well, tell us a little more about how did you get into the field and what it makes you so passionate about the customer-centric AI?
Well, I've always been a fan of customers in general. They've been around for a long time. It's funny because yeah, I've talked to people before and I said there's been one consistent throughout humanity, and that is we've always had a product to sell to a customer. How we sell it and what it is and the technology by which we sell it has evolved. But at the end of the day, there's always a customer. That's never going to change. You're always going to have consumers. And it's funny what you were talking about in terms of internal customers versus external customers. I once had somebody say, excuse me, I was doing a presentation and a workshop, and there somebody raised their hand. I'm sorry, can you help us better understand what the customer is, who the customer is? And I'm like, I'm sorry, what do you mean? And they said, well, we don't call them customers. We call them, whatever it was. And I said, it's interesting. So I started to have this slide that I would share that said, when I say customer, I mean, and then it was like client, consumer, guest, customer, internal, external, like any way you want to frame it, you are serving somebody. And in that process, you can call them whatever you want to call them, but they are a consumer, a customer of your product and services. And when we really think about this from an outside in perspective, we also get into this concept of the customer's customer. So your internal customer might still be serving an external customer, and you would want to understand that entire flow so that you can help them be successful. And I've always found this process fascinating, not just how people think about the customer, but in terms of, again, reversing that perspective and thinking about it from the consumer's point of view and how
and
they
how
want
they
to
want to
engage with you.
engage with you.
And in some
And in some
cases,
cases,
they may
they
want to
may want
engage
to
with you
engage with
by
you by
AI.
AI.
There was a
There was
report
a
that just
report
came
that
out
just came out
actually
actually
about 2 weeks
about two
ago
weeks ago
that showed
that
that
showed that
58% would
58% would
prefer to
prefer to
call you and
call
talk
you and
to a
talk
real
to a
human
real human
person.
person.
So when you
So when
have
you
that
have that
desire for a
desire for
human
human
connection,
connection,
then
then
we have to
we have to
really
really
think about
think
what
about
that
what that
AI
AI
component looks
component
like,
looks like.
how it is best serving that consumer, customer, client, internal, external, or fill in the blank.
That's a very good point. And I love the statistic, and that's the argument that I always run into as well. Like, well, the consumers really want, or the customers really want to talk to a real human being. And I totally agree. I would love to talk every single time to a real human being. What I don't want to be is to wait for 45 minutes to talk to that human being. And if you have a capacity to deliver an exceptional customer service by the human beings that responds 24/7 within a 1 minute hold, no more, and deliver an exceptional results by all means. I think there is probably a 1% of companies that can tackle this type of level of the human centric non AI powered solutions. However, today, the pushing and shoveling people to the old dated IVRs, I honestly, I have an ADHD. I don't have time. You completely lose me after this five or third round, like press one for this, two for that, and five for this. And then sometimes numbers are not consequent. So I'm like, I'm completely lost. And the drop off rate for the customer engagements falls to like 60% drop off rate in IVRs or any other automatic robotic responses. When you bring the AI capabilities, the right AI capabilities, they can really transform the experience that the customers say. Your IVR drop rate significantly reduced, and you can deliver this artificial intelligence, the right one, to bring the customer satisfactions rate right.
Yeah, there's an interesting trend starting to happen in the marketplace. We think about the differentiation effect of how you support your consumers. And Discover, as an example, Discover Card, they have a whole series of commercials out there that you might see, like, oh, you robots are sounding more human. No, you are talking to a human. And they are going all into that you can actually talk to a human. And as a
And as a
result,
result,
their market cap is actually improving, and their net promoter scores, all of these statistics are improving because we are seeing that people are craving that type of human connection. And so they're going to a service that is clearly distinguishing themselves as being human centric. Now, I'm going to call out a company because this just happened to me last night. There's a service called Kit. I'm not sure how many people might be familiar with them, but they're sort of a competitor to MailChimp. So if you're familiar with MailChimp, Kit is a competitor, and I've used them, and they basically are an email automation system. And last night, I was talking with their chatbot about a problem. We got that solved, and I was like, "Well, great! This chatbot was very helpful for this particular situation." However, I then went to run my campaign, and I got an immediate email that says, "We have disabled email for you. Please contact our support center." So I log into it. I've got a banner at the top that says, "There's a problem with your account. Click here to resolve." I click here, and it takes me back to the chatbot, which then the chatbot says, "I cannot help you with this problem. Please wait for 2 hours to speak with a representative." And in my mind, I'm thinking this is completely unacceptable, where you have a situation that has or requires a human component to it, you're still sending them to the chatbot and having the chatbot sit there and try to entertain you in a lobby until somebody comes. I mean, it makes no sense. And there's other issues with this particular scenario that could have been resolved way before it got to this escalation point. But it's an example of how AI is intelligent enough to know at what point in time it should require human participation. And yet, even when it knows it can, there is limitations at some organizations that we just don't have somebody on staff. We don't have somebody who's available. We don't have some. you'll have to wait until tomorrow, whatever the case might be. And these are true challenges that consumers are trying to better understand, expect from the companies that they are engaged with, and that brands are going to need to figure out.
That's very, very valuable point because a lot of folks would blame this on AI technology itself, but AI is just a tool and it can be very powerful in a skilled hands and very demotivating and frustrating in a less skilled hands. I have a personal story. I took my car for the dealership for the regular maintenance and I called in to make an appointment. And of course, I'm not surprised anymore, right? The AI agent picked up the phone and I quickly could understand the quality and the difference of the agent itself. It just gave me some information. Yes, it was conversational, yet it failed to ask me what kind of car do I have? Am I a registered customer? What kind of service do I need? And yet it scheduled an appointment. Then a human being called me, confirmed to ask me to move the appointment because they were double booked at the time. And I came in and asked them, like, why do you have an AI agents that doesn't do anything just because it's like it wasn't a cool thing to have and it has a very nice voice. And like, do you usually hire people they're dumb as a brick just because they sound nice? And that kind of gave a pause for the owner of the body shop. But anyway, continue. I know I would love to learn more about the book that you just published. Tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, so I launching today. I don't know when everybody's going to see this, but in podcast world, when I say today, I actually mean the day we're recording. But I have a new ebook called AI Powered Customer Success. And this is a customer centric perspective on implementing artificial intelligence within your customer experience, customer success organizations. And it
And
takes
it
a
takes a
10-step
10-step
framework and
framework
it
and it
presents how
presents.
you can think about and implement AI within your organization. Now, just because this is geared towards customer success teams, it doesn't mean that you can't use it. There is extremely valuable information in terms of starting any type of AI project within your company with a customer centric or a customer first perspective. So, all the way back to assessing your capabilities. We're using your car dealership type of example. Like, let's actually assess what you need. Do you need a phone operator? Do you need a intelligent chatbot? Do you have anybody within your organization that understands this and can help you execute it? Where is your data? How is your data being accessed? Is your data siloed across the organization, or is it centralized in a way that you can access lots of different types of information? So as you said, it doesn't know if I'm a member, it doesn't know what kind of car I have. Like, that's data that should be available. So as you go through this process of assessing your capabilities, then you can form an alignment around your teams and your organization and your goals. And really, if you're, again, customer first, then you're thinking through, well, if my goal is solving a customer's problem, how are we going to achieve that? I have a framework called the MVBO, which stands for minimal viable business outcome, as opposed to any product people out there, MVP, minimal viable product. This actually takes it from a business perspective. It finds the most valuable and easiest thing you can do that is going to generate the most value for your company and for your customer, and then targets that as how you can implement artificial intelligence to solve that MVBO. And this is all part of the framework and it's on my website. And so you can go and you can get it, download it. And of course, if you need some help, I can also support you along the way.
I love what you brought the framework. And I experienced this, with our customers. Sometimes they'll come to us and say, like, we want to have voice intelligence. I'm sure fine. And then we start doing the discovery phase, and turns out that probably they're lighting years away from the conversational intelligence to be deployed. They don't have their data in order. They have broken claim processing or a forms intake process And even from the agentic standpoint, agentic AI generations or chatbots, they're not quite ready for their data readiness. They have not completed their ABCs and they're talking about XYZ. And usually that's, we can put AI technology, we can launch you on a rocket ship that will take you to Mars if you're still pedaling on your tricycle. I mean, it's as silly as it sounds, right? The data integrity and AI is not a magic box that solves all of your problems. If you don't have your data in order, it can help you. If you don't have your processes documented, it can help you. It doesn't know what you know, what's in your mind. And if you're sole business operator and you have multiple kind of processes running simultaneously without any order to it, AI is not going to help you. You need to organize your flows, organize your documents, clean up your data, and then it says, what do you truly really need? And actually, before we talk about technology, you probably really need to understand, what are you trying to achieve, right? What is the outcome? What are you trying to achieve? It's silly to say that I just want an AI because everybody else having it. Not everybody else is having it. And quite honestly, not everybody else needing it, or not everybody else is ready for it. It's a very powerful tool in a skilled kind of toolbox, but you need to have skills, tools to really be able to deploy it.
Absolutely. And I think a part of the component here is the experience that you're trying to generate. So again, I really like your example of the car dealership, mechanic, because you could call in, you have a wonderful voice, and now these audio systems, as I know you're fully aware of, can get even more precise based on, say, an accent, or localization. And so then I start to feel like I'm talking to somebody who is in my region and familiar with me. But if we walk through your experience and we start to think about what we could have done different, the data component is like your phone number. And so now you call in, I know the phone number that is calling in. I can then check my database for that record. I can then call you by name and I can personalize that experience, because now, as in real time, I could come up with all of your information. Are you a customer? Your make and model of your vehicle. I can use that in the conversation back to you, personalize it based on the region where I know you're from. Like, there's all of these things that we can personalize ahead of time, and we can extract it just from your phone number. And so this is the kind of experience that you're talking about in terms of taking the data and then mapping it to the experience that we want, and then finding the tools like natural language and processing audio, and then applying that tool to formulate the experience that we want for our consumers.
And this is absolutely right. And that's still, but the whole point, the first experience that I've explained is still AI, and the second experience is also AI. But the orchestration and the workflow, that makes a tremendous difference. And the execution and deployment of the solution really makes a day and night difference. I hear sometimes customers like, oh, you know what, like, I talked to AI, it didn't really do anything for me. And the question is like, well, what was under the hood and who delivered that solution for you that created this poor experience for the users? If it, again, we work in a voice intelligence, right? We work heavily with the conversational intelligence, but I would tell day and night that the voice itself doesn't solve business problems. The execution and orchestration does, and the effective orchestrations. When you understand, again, time to value, do you help your customer to get their problem solved faster? Can you ask less questions? Can you get quicker answers? Can you prevent them to stay on hold for the longer time? Can you deliver them exceptional experience where they feel heard, seen, and problem solved, instead of getting them repeat themselves over and over again just because you checked the box that you have an AI tool for it built somehow? And again, like, the other obstacle that I think people are asking, like, okay, fine. Well, now we're clear that there is a differences in AI technology and what we need to focus and what we need to get done. What do we do then? How much does it cost? Do we need to have $1 billion? Do we need to have investments? How do you navigate your clients' questions on this? Because what I've seen is that people either have like, oh, we're not ready for it and we don't know where to start, or we don't have money for it, or we're too scared to even move anywhere. How do you navigate those?
Yeah, they're all valid topics. And, it's interesting because even as you're talking, one of the biggest questions, all of those questions are absolutely, where do I start? How much is it going to cost? That happens all the time. But what's really interesting is that people usually come to me and they say, here's my workflow. Here is my business model. Here is how we do things. And I want AI to solve this, whatever that workflow is, as opposed to saying, I want to completely rethink my workflow. Like if I had the opportunity to demolish it and start all over, here's how I would do it differently. And can AI help me accomplish that? And if you continually try to find a way for AI to be shoved into your existing processes, then you're not, to your point, orchestrating it in a way that's going to make sense. And when you start to unwind that, and you start to, this is why my minimal valuable business outcome is so critical, because if I tell you, what is one thing that you are doing today that if we were to solve would make you happy? Like, and most times it's not like, oh, I need to implement AI. It's like, oh, I wish I could completely redo this workflow and figure out a way to move this employee, or, whatever it is. It's like, okay, let's start there. And then when you get to the value of that, then it becomes a no-brainer. I mean, I once walked into a client and they said, this must be expensive. And I said, okay, well, let's say that for the next year, you're going to be able to generate $10 million. Would you like that? And they're like, yeah, yeah. Well, I would love to generate an extra $10 million a year. And I said, okay, what if I told you that was going to cost you $1 million? They're like, yeah, it sounds reasonable. I was like, okay, well, then let's continue to focus on that value proposition, which is you're trying to solve for what you know today as opposed to trying to solve for what potentially could be. And when you apply the value and the positioning and how your consumers are going to act to that, and you figure out that MVBO, all of this becomes a lot easier. But when you're set in this is my reality today, and I want to shove AI into this existing reality, it doesn't work.
So start with the end point in mind and work kind of backwards. What is the outcome you're trying to achieve, and not try to rethink how you've done it before, not to try to optimize your current, unless it's regulated, right? Unless you have a reason to stick to your current workflows, think of ignite the curiosity. And I love the fact that, and I think one of the most powerful things that we need to relearn, and when we start adopting AI technologies or start experimenting with AI, is to ignite the curiosity and open mindedness to approach the project. Because pretty much with a certain level of certainty, I can say that almost anything we can imagine today can be solved in some way and form with the power of AI. Maybe not from A to Z, but some elements of this can really, really tremendously improve our operations procedures and our experience for ourselves, our customers, and our employees. So, what is the most common questions that you get asked over and over and over again, that you was like, oh my God, I wish I could optimize that particular question?
Yeah, it's where to start. And I think I'm solving some of that with this new ebook that I've written. It's, change the perspective in terms of where you start. And I do think that there's a lot of people who, when they're asking where to start, they are thinking about their existing processes and how to embed AI into what they already know, as opposed to, okay, let's just take a step back. Let's Think about if you were going to be coloring, you're going to go get the coloring book and you're going to go get the crayons, and then you're going to make sure that you got the right crayon colors for whatever you're trying to color, right? It can be as simple as that. Like, let's go find the crayons, and let's then get the coloring book and let's fill in the lines one, section at a time. And so that is, a big common, like, just where do I start? I think the other biggest thing is, just the taxonomy, terminology, definitions around AI. I say all the time that most people understand what AI's capabilities are either from what they've read online, which most of it is false, or from watching The Terminator. And so when you're watching movies to define what AI is, there's a gap. In my second book, the book I wrote this year called Infallible, I did a little research, and what I found was that what people thought AI was capable of and what AI is actually capable of, there is about a 7-year gap. So when we are thinking, in terms of Star Trek, because we watch all of this on TV and believe, well, this is what AI is, and then we buy into the hype that is being marketed around us, there's 7 years between reality and futurism. So spending time talking with people about the terms and the capabilities and what AI is and what AI isn't also helps lay a foundation for expectations. If you think that you're going to build a product system that can teleport your product directly to the consumer because you watch Star Trek, let's tone that back a little bit and realize that maybe a digital download is sufficient enough. And then we can figure out, how to solve that particular problem. But yeah, between terminology and where to start, those are definitely the two biggest areas that I spend a lot of time.
And it's very interesting because where I see also the same similar type of trends in customers thinking who wants to work with AI technology. Think it is a double-sided sword of the creativity and imagination. Not, and I totally agree with you. Setting the ground rules and foundation on AI literacy and terminology, what it really means and what it is and what it's not, it's really fundamental. And you have to play this almost like a game with your customers because when you start with them and they have no idea that, let's say AI agents can recognize your voice and can perform tasks and what we've described like in complete entire workflows fully independently inside of your system, and they've never heard of this yesterday. Today they start and you open these horizons for them a little bit, then their creativity starts working and they're like, oh, can we do this, can well, I just talked to it, but it didn't recognize, didn't know my grandma's phone number. Like I asked it to call and I asked it to do my groceries. Why didn't do that? And it's just kind of adding up. Oh, it would be cool if it would recognize my accent and respond in the accent that I'm from. And then it piles up on the ideas. And we deviate from the core reasons why we started looking at the AI project in the first place, and the possibilities is endless. But also to your point, Chris, is that we need to really focus on ultimately what are we trying to solve. And it's still a technology. It's not a magic wand. It's not a Harry Potter's book. It's things that designed to create solutions for us. And we can tune it into the personalized way, to a certain extent, but still the imagining aspect of Harry Potter's book or Star Trek is probably several years away. And sometimes it's not even necessary. I've talked to some of the customers and they were like, we want to have a voice intelligence and we want to have exceptional customer support and we want to have a real avatar and we want to have it to fully lip sync and we wanted to recognize the person imagery and all these things. And then we were talking to some like form claims and takes. And I was like, well, that is all possible. And we're talking about, a 7-digit budget for this execution. Do you really need this? And what are you doing now to achieve the similar results? And that's just like, can it possible? Yes. Is it reasonable? No. Do you often run into this similar situation when people ask for some incredible, fantastic, phenomenal ideas that are really irrelevant for their business?
So it's funny that you mentioned that case right there, like fully avatar based, lip synced, professional, all for forms intake. And 2 years ago, I sat down with a client who wanted to do just that, forms intake, but have an avatar fully voice recognized who would interact and ask you the questions, and you could respond to it so that it can automate the form intake. And I said at that time, I said, why? Like explain to me why you want to spend this much money on that particular, use case. And their rationale was, well, this is where everybody's heading. This is the thing. Now, what's interesting is that if we look at the technology that was available 2 years ago versus the technology that is available today, they spent 6 figures on that particular project only to wipe it all away because 2 years later now the technology is that much better and different that they would have had to redo it. And I think part of this is understanding and trying to figure out what foundational components are. So for example, for those technical people out there, an API, application programming interface, those have been around for 30 plus years and they're probably not going anywhere. So you can start thinking, okay, well, APIs are like a foundational component of what I'm going to build. And then you think about like natural language processing. Well, okay, this has also been around for about 15 years and it's only gotten better. So you can say, okay, well, this is a primary component that is only going to mature and I won't have to worry about changing it too much. And when you're talking about kind of doing comparisons, well, if you have a Google device, like I have Google Home here, if you have an Alexa device, it's the same concept. It's just been expanded upon, and improved. So when you start to kind of frame it around components that you know are not going to change, that's good. But things like avatars, I tell you right, avatars 2 years ago and avatars today are completely different. And avatars today and avatars 2 years from now are going to be completely different. Like focus more on the audio component as opposed to the visual component. And when you break it down like that, then you can have a clearer understanding of what your roadmap is going to look like because okay, what technologies are going to evolve slower or be more consistent, and what technologies are probably going to be dismantled over the next couple of years.
Explaining to the customers and really actually reflecting on what's changing, what's improving, what's not. To your point, several years ago, I guess 2 years ago, a year ago, a lot of companies and the businesses felt a strong need to create and run their own private LLM models because of the security, because of whatever. And honestly, I mean, I'm asking the same questions. What made you think that that was the best option to do that? While the technology is evolving so drastically in the fundamental models that deliver the exceptional quality results and they're updated regularly, and there's billions of dollars invested to continuously enhance the experienced models. We can look at Google, we can look at OpenAI, we can look at what Microsoft is doing, we can look at what Amazon AWS is doing. Grok is picking up in multiple models. Those fundamental models have different tiers for enterprise use or for the consumer usage. They're continuously improving, and there's thousands and millions of dollars were wasted by companies who are trying to build their own micro LLM that didn't have billions of dollars to invest. And it's funny to see that there is a small to mid-sized businesses felt that there's a huge need to build their closed models to protect their three pieces of paper. And that's a shame, right? And it's a lack of understanding of what's changing, what's not, what's improving, what's not, or being told. But again, what you brought up the point, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and a lot of people get confused or redirected or misguided in a wrong field, that they feel like there is a necessity to really lock themselves into one system or build their own because they cannot trust anyone. and that's waste of resources, waste of time, and it's a kind of a shame. It's a lost cause for that.
Yeah, and a part of this also is, look, I can give you predictions of the future, but I don't know what the future holds. I mean, my accuracy rate is actually pretty high, I think, in a lot of spaces. But what we can do is we can learn from what we've seen in the past. So I've started to make the argument to a lot of people like this whole generative AI, LLMs, AI broadly, even if you want to say, is probably all going to go away in the next 5, 6 years. Now, when you hear that, your instinct is to say, "What? No, it's not going anywhere." I was like, "Okay, well, when's the last time you've had a conversation in your business about anything dealing with let's build a mobile app?" No, no one. No, but yet 10 years ago, 20 years ago, that was all anybody talked about was we've got to build an app for that, right? Before that, it was websites. I need a website. I've got to get online.com. No one, I mean, yes, there are still web designers out there. And yes, as you build new companies, you're like, I need a website. But no one, you go look across LinkedIn, no one is sitting there talking about how Web 2.0 is the thing of the future. And AI is going to be the same. In about 5 or 6 years, it's going to start to go away and it's going to be replaced by whatever the next big thing is. And so you start asking yourself, well, what is the next big thing? Well, there's two things that are in our immediate future. One is quantum computing. And I'll tell you right now, if quantum computing gets to a point where you can go to Best Buy and pick up a laptop with a quantum computer chip in it, everything changes. The world changes. We get into Star Trek world, right? And yet, if we think, okay, well, that's still a little farther away. So then what's next? Well, again, think about website to mobile. Well, mobile and a lot of mobile apps were nothing more than a carrying around website. And so if you think about LLMs, in the future, when we get to a point where we have personalized LLMs that are attached to us in some way, whether that's a wearable or within some sort of other device, and it becomes miniaturized, then yeah, then all of these kind of bigger corporations are going to start to go away. You talk about personalized LLMs. Well, think about websites. We've got products like WordPress out there that allow us to go and build up a website on demand. Think about the WordPress of LLMs. And right. And if you can get to that point where you could just spin up your own personal LLM for whatever you need because it's in a self-contained model that is free to download, that changes the entire landscape. And so you've got to kind of think through how technology has reached this point and then apply that to where we are heading next. And in those cases, yes, in 5 or 6 years, it's going to be something new and it is going to be personalized, carryable on my, person wearable type of AI. Yeah, and then all of this talk about what we're doing right now is going out the door.
That's a very good point. We can learn from the past and see the trends and dynamics, how technology evolves, and it's almost my parents remember how the first internet came or the first computers, and it was a huge revolutionary breakthrough. We're living through another wave of technology and tremendous advancements. And I think the next one you've mentioned, the quantum computing, is going to be another mind shifting dynamics that are going to transform to almost unrecognizable scale of how we operate today. So back to the question, for most of the business owners and decision makers, what do we do now? What can we do now? What should we do now?
Well, you can do what we're talking about. Figure out a place to start, figure out what your customers are asking for, figure out how you're going to solve that problem, and then start asking the question, what type of AI do I need to solve this problem? Or even do I need AI to solve this problem? I mean, if we go back to our case study about intake forms, I tell you what, you don't need AI for that. I have a lot of people who come to me and say, "Well, we've got AI now embedded for like this chatbot, and it does all of this, really great stuff, and it can pull up information for consumers." And I'm like, "Oh, so you have a search engine?" They're like, "No, it's a chatbot." And I was like, "No, you've built a search engine because that's all it's really doing. Like, you don't need AI and all of the tokens and costs involved if all you're going to do is present a glorified search engine." And so I think when you start to just, take that step back, go find your crayons, figure out what colors you need, and you really map it to a problem you're trying to solve. I've used this kind of phrasing a lot. Customer first, like what's the problem? Technology is last. There's a whole bunch of things in between customer and technology. And then AI maybe, like that's telling you that maybe you can use AI to solve this particular problem. But in cases like natural language processing and audio, customer support, sentiment analysis, there are some really good, strong use cases for artificial intelligence. But I always will argue start with what the problem is you're trying to solve for your customers. And then you can start to work backwards to figure out, okay, now how are we going to build this? Who's going to own it? What's the budget for it? And then what is the technology that's going to support it?
Chris, thank you so much. And I think I'm going to repeat it again. If you implement what Chris is talking about here, the flow and the strategy, start with the problem and kind of work backwards and understand what a problem you're trying to solve and what kind of customer you want to solve, regardless of where we at, whether in pre-AI, AI, or quantum computing or whatever thing comes next, you'll always stay relevant. You'll always stay on top because we don't live in an ideal world. The problems will always present themselves. We'll always have to solve what is the next best thing we can do to make the human interactions more pleasant, more approachable, and connect to each other in a business and professional and personal life. Chris, thank you so much for having. I'm pleasure to have you on my show. Any last comments and words of wisdom from you to the audience?
No, I mean, we've covered it. And, just to kind of re summarize, if you start backwards, if you start with the technology first, you're going to waste a lot of money because that technology is constantly evolving. And if you start with the technology, you also might end up in a situation where you present it to your consumers, your customers, and they don't like it. And then your customers are like, I'm out of here. I'm leaving. They go to your competitors because you've implemented something without including them in that process. This again is why it's so critical to start with what that problem is and what the consumers are asking for. Solve that. Anything else, and you're just opening yourself up for a lot of heartache.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate you.
Absolutely.